So now that we know how events work in Ethereum and Solidity, it's actually really easy to add to our ERC20 contract. And actually ERC20 already defines exactly how the event looks like. So one event is the transfer event, which has an indexed address from, an indexed address to, and the amount that was transferred, so value. And then there's also an approval event, which also has indexed addresses owner, indexed addresses spender, and the amount. So this is the event type definitions. And now to actually emit the event. So let's start with the transfer. That's a one line where you just say emit transfer. So let's do inside the transfer here. And then at the end, just let's say emit transfer. And then you have to pass the parameter to the event, the data. So that would be in this case sender, recipient, and amount. And then we also have this mint function here, right? So obviously minting is also kind of a transfer. So if we want to be actually fully correct, then yes, we would also have to emit actually an event here in this case, where obviously the sender is no one. So it's just address 0. And yeah, lastly, just the approval event. So we have to emit it in the approve here. So let's emit approval msg.sender, spender, and amount. And so this is now a fully working ERC20 contract. One good thing for good practice, which is technically actually not part of the ERC20, but inside the transfer from, we are changing the allowance, obviously. So it's actually pretty good practice to emit the approval event in this case as well. When they created the ERC20 standard, I guess they just didn't think about this. But usually you also would emit an approval event here because the allowance in the mapping is changing. So then it would be the new allowance here. Okay, so this is our ERC20 now fully finished. And this is done. One last little thing that I just noticed is in my editor here, I get these messages that say linter error message for require is too long, and here as well. And I'm not sure why I didn't see that earlier. I guess my IDE wasn't working properly, but this is actually something, that you would expect to see, and it has to do with linting. So to explain that quickly, let's look at the files that we have here on the left again that were auto-created by Hardhat for us. And there's linting already included for us. So here you have ESLint and solhint. And if you're coming from the JavaScript world, you already are familiar with ESLint. And what that basically is looking at the code that you have either in JavaScript or TypeScript for the case of ESLint, or for Solidity in the case of solhint. And it basically has a set of rules that it will go through. And those rules are not necessarily compiler errors, like your code can compile just fine but still have linting errors. And those can be like security related things or stylistic things. Depending on if it's in JavaScript or Solidity, you'll have different rules. And in those files here, you can actually define the rules yourself. So in this case for Solidity, that what we're focusing on right now, you have already the recommended rules included here. And it's usually a good idea to have short require messages here. That's why there's a rule that says don't use too long messages, because then the longer the message, the more gas you have to spend when deploying the contract. But if we just want to ignore this rule for now, then in the file solhint.json, you would just add the name of the rule. So here, if you remember, there was reason-string. So reason-string. And then we can say warn and then change the configuration for this rule, which in this case would be max length. And let's add it up to 64. Okay, so yeah, you can see it. The error is gone now here. And the exact rules that are available and how to change configuration is available. You can just read on their GitHub of Solhint. And if you have Visual Studio Code, then it should already be like automatically working for you, that this is automatically linted. If you're using some other IDE, you might have to do some extra setup.